Chances lived Ryan Cooper, a quiet mechanic with rough hands and a gentle soul. His workshop smelled of oil and memories, a place where machines found new life. And broken people sometimes did too. One cold evening, as the streets fell silent, and the wind whispered through the trees, a faint squeak echoed from the road. A young woman in a worn-out wheelchair struggled up the hill, her face pale but determined. Ryan didn't know her name, her story, or her pain. But the moment their eyes met, something shifted. He thought he was just fixing a broken chair that night. He didn't realize he was about to repair a life and rediscover his own heart in the process. In a small town just outside Dallas, Texas, Ryan Cooper, a 36-year-old mechanic, ran a small workshop that smelled of oil, metal, and memories. His days usually passed fixing broken engines, patching worn-out tires, and chatting with regular customers. But that evening, as the wind turned cold and the streets began to empty, a faint squeak reached his ears. He looked up from his toolbox and saw a young woman struggling to push an old wheelchair up the slight slope toward his shop. Her hands trembled against the cold steel, and her face showed both strength and exhaustion. Ryan stepped forward instinctively. "Hey, you okay there?" he called, wiping his hands on a rag. The woman, probably in her late 20s, smiled nervously. "Hi, I'm Lena Parker. My wheelchair. It's falling apart, and the repair shop downtown said it'd take weeks." She hesitated, clearly embarrassed. "I can't afford a new one, so I was hoping you might take a look." Ryan glanced. At the chair, one wheel wobbled badly, the brakes were barely holding, and the armrests were torn. "Bring it in," he said gently. Inside the workshop, the yellow light from the old bulb flickered as Ryan examined the chair. "You've been using this a long time," he said. Lena nodded. "Since high school. Insurance stopped covering replacements years ago." Ryan crouched down, tracing his fingers along the worn frame. "Don't worry, Lena. I'll make it like new." She looked at him in disbelief. Most people avoided her gaze, spoke in pity, or pretended not to see her at all. But this man talked to her like anyone else, like she mattered. As Ryan began working, Lena watched quietly. There was something calm about the way he moved, methodical yet caring. She noticed a small framed photo near the counter, half hidden under receipts. It showed a young girl in a wheelchair, smiling beside a much younger Ryan. Before she could ask, he caught her looking. His expression softened. "My sister Anna," he said. "She passed away when she was 15. Used to say I could fix anything, even her chair." Lena didn't reply. She simply understood. The silence between them felt gentle, not heavy. Hours passed, and the sound of tools filled the room, screwdrivers turning, bolts tightening, metal clinking softly. Ryan replaced the damaged bearings, straightened the bent rim, and cleaned every joint. Every now and then, he'd glance at Lena, who watched him with quiet gratitude. "You really don't have to do this tonight," she said once. He smiled faintly without looking up. "Some things can't wait till morning." She didn't know if he was talking about the wheelchair or something deeper. When Ryan finished tightening the last screw, he leaned back and sighed. "Give it a try." Lena hesitated, then placed her hands on the wheels and pushed gently. The chair moved smoothly, no squeak, no wobble. Her eyes widened in surprise. "It feels perfect," she whispered. Ryan chuckled. "Guess my sister trained me well." For a moment, their eyes met hers, full of gratitude, his full of quiet memory. She tried to offer payment, pulling out a few crumpled bills, but he shook his head. "Just promise me one thing, keep smiling like that." Lena's lips trembled between laughter and tears. "You don't even know me, and you're helping like this." "Why?" Ryan shrugged lightly. "Because someone once helped me when I needed it most. Guess I'm just returning the favor." She didn't press further, but something inside her shifted. In a world that often looked away, here was a man who saw her without pity. She rolled toward the door, the sound of the wheels now soft and steady. The Texas night had grown colder, but she felt strangely warm. After she left, Ryan stood in the doorway, watching the dim light from her wheelchair reflect on the wet pavement. The sound faded slowly until only the hum of distant cars remained. He turned off the lights and sat at his workbench, staring at the photo of Anna. "You'd have liked her," he murmured. The workshop was silent except for the ticking wall clock, but he felt his sister's presence somewhere in the quiet. It wasn't sadness this time, it was peace, the kind he hadn't felt in years. Over the next few days, Ryan went back to his routine, fixing cars and greeting neighbors. But every time the shop bell rang, his heart jumped, hoping it might be Lena again. She'd promised to stop by for a checkup on the wheelchair. One afternoon, when the sun turned the workshop orange, she returned, this time carrying a small box of cookies. "For you," she said shyly. "My way of saying thank you." Ryan laughed, the sound echoing off the walls. "You didn't have to," she grinned. "Neither did you." They talked longer that day about music, about their favorite places in Texas, about how people often mistake kindness for weakness. Ryan told her about his dream of opening a free repair day once a month for people who couldn't afford to fix their mobility aids. Lena's eyes lit up. "That's beautiful, you should do it." He nodded slowly. "Maybe I will." And in that moment, surrounded by grease, laughter, and the scent of warm cookies, Ryan realized he hadn't just repaired a wheelchair that week. He had repaired a part of himself. That evening, as the sun disappeared behind the hills, Lena left again, promising to visit soon. Ryan watched her roll down the street, the soft rhythmic sound of her wheels blending with the wind. He thought about how life sometimes brings strangers together for reasons you can't explain, how one small act can bridge years of loss and loneliness. He didn't need thanks or recognition. Fixing that chair had reminded him that his hands could still bring hope, that kindness could still heal. And for the first time in a long while, Ryan smiled to himself, really smiled. Back inside, he cleaned his tools and closed the shop, the faint scent of engine oil lingering in the air. On his way out, he whispered quietly, "Good night, Anna," as if his sister could hear. Somewhere beyond the stars, maybe she could. The town lights flickered in the distance, and Ryan felt something warm spread through his chest. Tomorrow would bring new repairs, new faces, and maybe even new hope. But tonight, under the Texas sky, he was content knowing that one broken thing, one soul, one memory had finally been mended. A few months had passed since Ryan repaired Lena's wheelchair, and life in the small Texas town rolled on quietly. The workshop buzzed with the usual rhythm: old trucks, dusty tires, the faint sound of country radio humming in the background. But something inside Ryan had changed. He still worked hard, still lived alone, but he smiled more now. Customers noticed. The tired look in his eyes had faded, replaced by a calmness that felt new. Every once in a while, he'd glance at the photo of his sister, and instead of pain, he felt gratitude. One crisp Saturday morning, as he was tuning a motorcycle, the familiar sound of soft wheels rolled up behind him. He turned with a grin. "You again," he said warmly. Lena laughed. "Miss me?" She was wearing a sky blue scarf that fluttered in the wind, and she carried a small folder in her lap. "Actually, I came with a proposal," she said, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Ryan raised an eyebrow. "A proposal? That sounds serious." She handed him the folder. Inside were printed pages, sketches, and a few typed notes titled "Wheels of Hope." As he read through the pages, his eyes widened. It was a project plan, a charity initiative to repair and donate old wheelchairs to people who couldn't afford them. "You did this?" he asked softly. Lena nodded, smiling shyly. "I couldn't. Stop thinking about what you said that day about starting a free repair day. So I started putting this together. I thought maybe we could do it together." Ryan blinked, surprised and touched. He'd talked about that idea once, almost carelessly, never imagining someone would take it seriously. Yet here she was, turning his words into something real. For the next few weeks, Ryan and Lena worked side by side. His workshop became a small hub of kindness. Old wheelchairs, walkers, and crutches started appearing at his door. Donated by neighbors, hospitals, and local churches, Ryan repaired them. Lena organized volunteers, and together they delivered mobility aids to those in need. Word spread fast. People came from nearby towns, grateful and astonished that someone cared. The local newspaper even ran a small story about them. Mechanic brings wheels of hope to Texas. Ryan laughed when he read it, but deep down, he felt something he hadn't in years. Purpose. One evening, after a long day, Lena sat beside him outside the shop, both sipping coffee as the sunset painted the sky orange and gold. "You know," she said softly, "you changed my life the day you fixed my chair." Ryan turned to her, surprised. "I didn't do much," she smiled faintly. "You did more than you think. You treated me like a person, not a burden. You made me believe I could still make a difference." He looked at her, unable to speak for a moment. "Funny," he said finally, "because you did the same for me." Their bond deepened quietly, not rushed or forced. They began sharing dinners, long talks, and late-night laughter over greasy sandwiches. Ryan, who had once buried himself in work to escape loneliness, found joy in simple things again. Lena encouraged him to apply for a local community grant to expand the project. He hesitated at first, unsure if anyone would support a small-town mechanic's dream, but she believed in him completely. "People follow heart, not money," she said. And somehow he believed her too. They sent in the application, not expecting much, but miracles have a way of finding the right people. A month later, Ryan received an envelope with the town seal. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a letter announcing they had been approved for a community development grant of $25,000. "No way," he whispered, eyes wide. Lena clapped her hands, laughing with pure joy. "Ryan, we did it!" The next few weeks were a whirlwind of excitement. They expanded the workshop, bought new tools, and started holding free repair drives every weekend. People began volunteering, students, retirees, even other mechanics from nearby towns. The once quiet workshop became a symbol of hope. But behind the smiles, Lena was fighting her own quiet battle. Her health had been declining for months, though she never mentioned it. One night, Ryan noticed her hand trembling slightly as she worked on a chair. "You okay?" he asked gently. She hesitated before nodding. "Just tired," she said. But the next morning, she fainted in the workshop. Panic surged through Ryan as he rushed her to the hospital. After hours of waiting, the doctor came out with a somber expression. "She's been overexerting herself. Her spinal condition is worsening. She needs rest, serious rest." Ryan's heart sank. Over the next few days, he visited Lena daily. She hated hospitals but smiled whenever he walked in. "You look worried," she teased once. "You scared me," he admitted quietly. "You shouldn't be fixing chairs. You should be taking care of yourself." She shook her head gently. "Ryan, this project isn't just about fixing things. It's about giving people their dignity back. Promise me you won't stop, even if I can't help for a while." He held her hand tightly, his throat heavy. "I promise." Her eyes softened, and she whispered, "Then I can rest easy." Weeks turned into months. Lena slowly recovered, though she couldn't work as much. Ryan ran the workshop and the charity full-time, growing it into something much bigger than he ever dreamed. Donations poured in from across the state. They even partnered with hospitals in Dallas and Fort Worth. Every time Ryan handed a repaired wheelchair to someone who needed it, he thought of Lena, her courage, her kindness, her unshakable belief in him. She had changed the way he saw life, work, and even grief. She had taught him that broken things weren't the end of the story, they were where healing began. One summer evening, they held a small ceremony outside the workshop. The sign above the door now read the Parker Cooper Foundation. Lena insisted on including both their names, but Ryan secretly thought hers should have been first. The mayor gave a short speech, thanking them for their contribution to the community. When it was Ryan's turn to speak, he paused, voice trembling slightly. "I used to fix machines," he said. "Now I think I fix hearts because one kind soul showed me how." He looked at Lena, sitting proudly beside him, her smile radiant. The crowd applauded, and she mouthed, "You did it." That night, after everyone left, Ryan stood outside under the stars. The Texas sky stretched endlessly above him, quiet and bright. He felt a gentle tug on his sleeve. It was Lena, holding out a small wrapped box. "Open it," she said. Inside was a silver keychain shaped like a tiny wrench, engraved with the words, "Keep fixing hearts." He smiled, blinking back tears. "You always know what to say," he whispered. She laughed softly. "That's what friends are for." He looked at her then, not as a woman in a wheelchair, but as the strongest person he had ever known. Years later, their foundation grew beyond Texas, reaching nearby states and helping thousands. Ryan often traveled to speak at events, always carrying that tiny silver wrench in his pocket. Whenever someone asked how it all began, he'd tell. The story of a broken wheelchair and a young woman who believed in kindness more than comfort. Lena's health never fully returned, but her spirit remained unstoppable. Together, they showed the world that you don't need power or wealth to make a difference. Just compassion, courage, and a bit of hope. And so, in a quiet corner of Texas, a mechanic and a dreamer changed countless lives, starting with each other's. When people passed by the workshop, they still saw the faded sign with two names side by side, glowing faintly in the evening light. Ryan would often look at it and smile, whispering softly, "You were right, Lena. Some things can't wait till morning." And somewhere deep inside, he could almost hear her laughter, carried by the wind, gentle, strong, and endless.